This is breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
We asked the media to be here is that, obviously we're not trying the case in the media, but we want to establish better relations with the media as a lot of information has come out. And so we want to make ourselves available to strengthen the relationship with the media as the case develops. We're going to have hearings. There are going to be developments in the case as we go along, and we just want to keep open communication with the media so it's not so one-sided, because obviously the state makes statements to the media, and we want to adequately represent our client. And so with that, I think we'll open it up to questions. Yes?
I understand that Davis essentially wanted to make you guys his lawyers. He did have another case going on. What was the decision? Where did that decision stem from? Do you know what your client had? Why did he decide to make the change?
Well, I think some of it did have to do with that battery by a prisoner case, which he went to trial on and was found guilty. I think in some ways it can be like a sports team. If you come up short, sometimes you need to change the leadership.
Are you guys going to be waiting? Is it effective immediately? Are you guys waiting until that motion is reviewed by the court to go ahead and move over with representation, or is this effective immediately?
We filed a substitution of attorneys in this case. So we are his attorneys for the February 9th trial date. As far as that case is still pending. However, we are not involved with that case.
Do you anticipate being able to keep the February 9th trial date?
We anticipate going forward in February, yes. And that's also in part while we were retained on this case. I mean, we try cases. That's what we do. I believe I've tried well over 100 cases to verdict in several states. He wanted a trial team, and that's why we're here, and that's why you've been retained to represent him.
Yeah, I mean, we're not taking this case trying to win it on a technicality. We're obviously still getting up to speed on the case, but we anticipate it going to trial.
The news release we received about this event promised that there would be new announcements along with questions. Are there any announcements, or?
There's going to be a number of motions filed. There'll be a motion to suppress filed promptly that concerns the search warrant that was executed on his residence. That search warrant contained a nighttime clause, which is curious. You've got a case that's nearly 30 years old, yet you have this 24-hour nighttime search, this 24-hour authorization. So that's the first of several motions that we anticipate filing. I mean, anytime you have a cold case, obviously there's concerns. There's degradation of evidence, loss of witness testimony. We anticipate challenging this case on those grounds as well. But again, it's not necessarily linear representation. I mean, it's our job to basically kick the constitutional tires of this case in our preparation for trial. But there's no mistake, we will be prepared to proceed to trial in this case.
And when might we see these motions?
We were just retained last week. We're working on them right now. I anticipate the first motion concerning the suppression of evidence should be filed within the next 2 weeks.
Additionally, I think we're looking into whether or not, and again, this is based on how old the case is and how stale evidence may have been and whether evidence was maintained. We could be looking into a spoliation motion as well.
What was actually found during the search of Davis's home that you wanted to suppress?
Everything. We understand that there was rounds of ammunition found, which it's our position had nothing to do with this case whatsoever. There was a great deal of documents that were taken. In Mr. Wilson's initial press conference, he had stated that our client is presumed innocent, and that's obviously a constitutional protection that every defendant enjoys. However, he had said that just recently they had come upon evidence that they felt basically corroborated their theory of the case, and he had made reference to this search warrant. So again, there's still a lot to be seen in this case, but obviously if there's evidence that they intend to use in this case, we intend to challenge the constitutionality of the seizure of that evidence.
What do you anticipate your trial strategy
Well, would you like to speak to that?
Well, I think, it's, the idea here is that the state has the burden of proving it beyond reasonable doubt. We don't think that they can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Also, just to go back a second, about what was seized, also what was mentioned was some memorabilia, posters of Tupac and things like that, which we don't really think has a lot of evidentiary value, but if we're talking about things that would be suppressed, it would really be anything that they think might be evidence.
The theory of the defense is that he didn't do it. And this presumption of innocence, while it's a constitutional principle, it's also a reality. I mean, it's our understanding that the primary thrust of this case are his repeated claims to have been in the vehicle, his claims that he was in Las Vegas. Well, when you present a case to a grand jury, it's a very low standard. It's a probable cause standard. When you go to trial, it's the highest legal standard that we have in the United States. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. These statements that he made will be addressed. The context in which those statements were made will be addressed, and the reliability of those statements will be addressed.
Are you going to take the same position Arnold took, that Davis is a liar and you can't trust what he says?
It's not so much an issue of being a liar in that, we live in a society now of dual personas. I mean, we have public personas, we have personas in reality, we have online personas. That is going to be addressed and explained in much more detail, and I would submit with a great deal more accuracy than has been done so far. But again, that's going to be presented to the jury, which will be the ultimate determiner of the facts in this case.
And if I could add, the question, is a person a liar or not a liar? Most people are going to lie for certain reasons, for certain purposes. Very rarely do you find a person that, and I would say never, that always tells the truth or always lies. So the idea that you would present Mr. Davis as a liar doesn't make much sense, because what we're really talking about is specific statements, whether those were true, and what was the motivation for making those statements at the time, in the full context that those statements were made in.
So, this case was cold for more than 2 decades. Your client, I believe, has written a book, been on podcasts and that sort of thing. So what I'm hearing is that your defense is basically he wasn't telling the truth in his book or on the podcast.
Can I address that? Well, first of all, and this is a narrative that we've seen, that this is his book, Duane Davis. Have you read the book?
No.
Okay, it's called Compton Street Legend, and there are 2 names on that book. Duane Davis is not a writer. It's written in the voice of Duane Davis, but I'll tell you, for instance, the book quotes, so it's written from the first person of Duane Davis, but it quotes Winston Churchill, A Tale of Two Cities, and Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man, amongst other things. Now, those words and that style is certainly not his. So at the very least, those words are not exclusively his. And we can delve more into what words were his, what words weren't his, and why those words were chosen in that particular context. So, that's what we've heard a lot, is that this is his book, his words, but it's right on the page. There's another name there. It's Yusuf Jah.
Why would he have put his name on the book if he didn't write it, or if he didn't agree with what was in it?
There's a financial incentive to that. Obviously, there wouldn't be any financial gain if a book was written on that, hey, I wasn't involved. So again, that's part of the complexity and the complete story of why those statements were made. As Mr. Pandulo had addressed, there's a great deal of argument to be made whether or not he in fact made those statements. In a court of law, in order for an admission, or as they sometimes refer to it as a confession, it has to belong to the defendant, or the person actually making the statements. And in here we're going to be calling into question and proving that it appears that those in fact were not his statements.
what needs to be done at this point to prepare for the trial?
Right? A lot.
A lot. Everything. You know, this case represents one of the most significant cultural events of the last 30 years. I mean, there are so many books and documentaries, fictionalized movies made about these events. They're connected to public figures, perennial public figures over the last several decades. There's a lot to learn about this case, and I think at this time, you know, we're immersing ourselves in the case, in the evidence, and everything surrounding it.
We've had a series of conversations with R.J. Bond. He's a documentarian who has a great deal of institutional knowledge concerning this case. While he's a journalist, he is not an investigator. We have had a series of discussions and will continue to have discussions with him concerning his knowledge of this case that's obviously, you know, it's covered over 3 decades.
Would you be able to make us more familiar with why Davis decided to select you guys? Like, what does it speak to as far as your defense skills?
I'd say they're superb. Obviously, I'm not necessarily an objective judge of that, but I've been practicing for nearly 29 years. I have a practice based primarily upon criminal defense and trial practice. I've known Mr. Pandulo for nearly 20 years. We've worked together in several cases, and we, quite frankly, make a very good team. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's results, and we're seeking, obviously, results that are beneficial to our client. So this isn't our first rodeo, nor our last. We anticipate giving him the very best defense available and that we can provide.
And I got to give Mr. Draskowitz a compliment here, because I would say that if I were charged with murder, I would want him to represent me.
So I know you just started, but it is just 5 months or so until the trial starts. Do you have an idea of witnesses, specifically someone like Suge Knight? Do you have any expectation that he would be called by you or the other side, brought over from prison in California?
That's a very definite possibility. Obviously, we will leave no stone unturned. I mean, we do, as officers of the court, we do have powers that are given to us by the court. So we anticipate thorough investigation. We brought in one of the best investigators in the state, and I would say the country. I believe truly that 5 months will be sufficient time to adequately prepare and present this case. It's my understanding this case, in large part, has just basically collected dust on the part of the state. So,
Do you plan to contact Mr. Knight?
We do.
Maybe even visit him in prison?
Certainly within the realm of possibility, yes.
It's not out of the realm of possibility that Sean P. Diddy Combs, he's certainly mentioned in the book Compton Street Legend, and it's sort of an open question. If the state believes what is written in that book, you know, was Mr. Combs questioned? Would he be a witness? You know, and that's all I'll go into on that point. But if the book is out there for everybody to read, I mean, you could see how he's specifically mentioned in that book.
Arnold had raised the possibility of an alternate suspect. Is that an avenue that you think has credibility? Is it something you intend to pursue?
Well, we've heard multiple alternative suspects. I mean, now some of these are more credible than others. So yes, we are looking into certain credible alternate suspects. But you know, there have been so many theories about this case. I mean, some people think Tupac Shakur is still alive. We don't believe that, by the way.
That's not the theory of this defense.
No.
And obviously, if our client wasn't involved, somebody else was. So I mean,
Isn't the shooter dead?
we don't know.
The assumption is that Orlando Anderson was the shooter. Well, I mean, in some of the narratives, it was one of the so there were supposedly 4 gentlemen in that car, in that white Cadillac. Well,
They're all dead.
really, all of them? Well, But that's an assumption that, let's think about what proof, other than statements by Mr. Davis, what proof do we really have of that? What happened with that white car? Why was it never found? We're looking into that. There may be conflicting information on reports about a white Cadillac being recovered. But, this is an issue with the case being so old, is that, had this case been brought in the 90s, it maybe wouldn't be so hard to follow up on these things.
So in the trial, we can expect to see the whole story being explained, at least examined, that what happened that night at, I think it was the MGM, right?
Yes.
And after the fight, what instigated the events and the timeline. So we'll have witnesses that will go through that whole.
We
timeline.
anticipate reviewing everything. I mean, it's fair to say we're fairly new to this, and this is fairly early on in the game. So obviously, this is going to be a developing topic.
Well, and so this is another sort of assumption, is the beating of Orlando Anderson, was that in fact what precipitated the shooting? I mean, that's an assumption. I mean, obviously, the state wants to prove that, and that is mentioned in the book Compton Street Legend. But there are other potential motives that are mentioned in there, some of which are contradictory and conflicting. So, if we're looking at that book, and if we're looking at those statements, I mean, we really have to look at the credibility of those statements and then say, well, there's a jury instruction that says, if you find that a witness has lied about something that is significant, that you can toss out everything that they said. So, if we were to apply that here, if you toss out those statements, considering, I mean, that they may be contradictory to certain facts, that they may be contradictory to each other, then what do we have? And can we prove that there were 4 guys even in that white Cadillac? Can we prove that they're the ones that everyone?
Maybe they bring certain identity. He was in the car.
Maybe so.
He knows also what happened at the MGM.
So we may see.
We'll have to wait and see. Exactly. That's a meritorious point. So.
Is there anyone else who you would have your eye on as far as we be building up to the stand?
Again, this is going to be a work in process. We're at the very beginning of this, and we've got 5 months to develop the facts how we intend to present them.
Well, if you want something interesting, in the book Compton Street Legend, and this may be something that, obviously we have to investigate, but Foxy Brown is mentioned. I mean, have you heard this? I mean,
I know Foxy
if, and we haven't, oh, you do?
I don't know like that, no love.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you could give her, okay, all right. You can't put us in contact with her?
No.
No? Okay.
She doesn't want to be reached.
Yeah.
Well, you see, and that's, and here's my point about that, right? If potential parties don't want to be reached, that's a difficulty for the state, not necessarily for us. We don't have to present the case. We didn't bring the case.
It, 5 months, in lawyer speak, that's kind of like 5 minutes, so I know you guys have a whole bunch of other cases to prepare for. Could we see this case being pushed back to give you guys more time, or are you guys confident that you'll have 5 months and be able to be successful in this case?
We anticipate being ready on February 9th. Obviously, there can be unforeseen circumstances, but as we sit here today, we anticipate going forward on February 9th.
And, obviously that's a moving target, so maybe, as the case develops, at closer to the end of the year, I mean, we might, that can evolve, but, 5 months can be a short amount of time. It can also be an eternity. I mean, if you're willing to put the effort in, and we are.
Sorry, I'm just going to come to the point of Foxy Brown. Actually, we were the ones who broke that story, that the prosecution have tried to reach out to her, given that would solidify their case. If what Keffe had written in Compton Street Alleged was correct, then that would put him in Las Vegas on the night at the time he denies it. Would Foxy Brown be potentially the bombshell witness for either you or the prosecution?
Potentially. And you want to speak to that? It's again, it's a work in progress, and we'll see where the evidence leads.
You know, I could say I'd definitely be willing to talk to her and see what she has to say. If anybody wants to pass my number along.
Best of luck getting on with it.
No Lil Kim? No, I'm just kidding.
If there's a way to tie her in, I'd be happy to talk to her as well.
So if I may, sorry gentlemen, James Desper, I've been covering this for the US Sun, and I've interviewed RJ, plenty of the family, both sides. I just wondered, obviously, in the most respectful way, one of the interesting things is Keffe has had financial issues raising bail. He had a public defender before, and Carl Arnold, and with you guys, the notion of a financial compensation for this. There was a story, I believe, circulated. I don't know factually that it's accurate. There's a documentary coming along with this to financially cover your fees. Could you just cover that off so that we know the full picture?
I don't have any knowledge of that, and I'm not in a position to speak as to that.
And in terms of how Keffe's paying for his defense, if I may ask?
We've been retained, and outside of that, I'm not going to speak on that subject.
Thank you.
I know that you guys said that you guys want a better working relationship with the media. Is that coming from a not so good relationship with the media? Where does that stem from?
I would say out of necessity. I mean, you know, we see certain of the sort of standard narrative that's out there, and you know, we're not, again, we're not trying the case in the media, and so a lot of, you know, what you hear us doing is sort of challenging certain of the assumptions, because you know, when those assumptions are not challenged in a certain way, the state's narrative can kind of be accepted as a foregone conclusion, and we just want to point out that that's not necessarily the case, and you know, to give us a shot to show what we're going to show, and you know, to actually take this to trial, you know, where we believe that we're going to win. So.
I mean, your own client has described this, quote unquote, as the biggest case in Las Vegas history. Given that statement, may I ask about your emotions and sentiments about covering, quote unquote, the biggest case in Las Vegas history?
We're looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
We're looking forward to the trial. We're looking forward to the process. We're looking forward to face the jury and to address the issues that the state brings up and how to rebut them.
And if I may, Keffe himself, I mean, we know he's had a few health problems.
He has.
His family has been forthright with me about that. How is he doing both emotionally and medically, given he's obviously spoken about his medical conditions?
I know he's got a great deal of medical conditions. Obviously, they've been exacerbated being in custody. He wants this trial to proceed in February as well.
I can tell you this, when Mr. Draskovic and I went to get his signature on the document that would allow us to be his attorney, he was smiling ear to ear.
I'd like to go back to the question about documentary and fees. Is there, what's the status? I mean, it was a big issue last year when there was a bail hearing. What's the status of any media deals that Davis is making?
I know of none.
So you haven't been involved, have either of you been involved in negotiating any sort of media arrangement that's going to make Davis money?
No.
No.
And you're not aware of any?
I'm unaware of any.
Okay.
I'm sorry to follow up on that point, but it's interesting because obviously this was discussed perhaps 2 years ago in relation specifically to Michael Jackson's lawyer. That's how he raised the funds to pay for his legal representation in his manslaughter trial. So, I mean, obviously, while you're not currently aware of it, or you're not currently in negotiations or have no contract, is it something you would consider in the long term?
Obviously, that's a bridge that we could cross when we came upon it, but as of this point in time, there is no bridge to come upon.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like
All right.
us to know?
Oh, I think you've covered it, yeah. We appreciate you coming. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. All right, we don't anticipate this being the first time that we speak to you, but again, we just wanted to start out and introduce ourselves.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Sorry, when is the next time that you guys will be in court?
I know he has a sentencing coming up on that other matter which we're not involved in. We'll be filing several pretrial motions that need to be filed. These are issues that need to be brought up pretrial, so we anticipate that happening in the very near future.
Who will be handling the battery sentencing?
I believe it's a current attorney on that case. will
Arnold?
be. Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching Breaking News from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel,